Hi, and welcome to episode 363 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for advertising, marketing, and digital communication specialists. I have the wonderful privilege today of being here with Shelly Palmer, and I will introduce you to Shelly. Thank you so much for taking the time. So if there's anybody here who doesn't know that, Shelly covers tech and business for Good Day New York. He writes a weekly column for Adweek. He's a regular commentator on CNN and CNBC. He co-hosts the award-winning podcast Tech Stream with Shelly Palmer and Seth Everett. He hosts Shelly Palmer Crypto Wednesday live stream. He's the CEO of the Palmer Group, which is a strategic consulting firm that advises Fortune 500 companies on technology solutions, media, and marketing. He's a totally prolific author. He, along with a daily newsletter that you must subscribe to immediately, his books include the Amazon bestseller Blockchain, is a long title, Blockchain, Cryptocurrency, NFTs, and Smart Contracts, an executive guide to the world of decentralized finance, and many more books. He's also on the board of the ADL, a leading anti-hate organization, and the co-founder of the Gun Safety Alliance, a network of business leaders and committed individuals from across every industry working together to reduce gun deaths in the US by 50% by the year 2029. I hope it doesn't take that long. We should point out that you're not a certified financial planner, that you don't give financial advice. We're going to discuss the role that digital currency will play and is playing in marketing, talk about what's possible, what some strategies may be, and how the field is likely to evolve. I got to say, I'm guessing you don't sleep much. So
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Yeah, my mother used to say that as she was vacuuming by your head, yeah, get up, you'll sleep when you're dead. So, just just really quickly to define some basic terms for listeners who aren't familiar with digital currency. To quote you, the problem is that the world of crypto can be very confusing with all the jargon, acronyms, and other unfamiliar words. Maybe you're even saying crypto schmipto, why should I care? And you've written voluminously, and you do webinars and so much more about digital currency, and your information is one of the best possible places to get up to speed on the phenomena. And there's a really thorough glossary of all the terms you might ever need to know in your book, which everyone needs to rush out and buy immediately. But I'd like to cover a couple of them quickly.
Sure.
So if you'd indulge us on that one, that would be great. So what is DeFi?
DeFi, decentralized finance, and it's a catch-all phrase for pretty much the technologies and the group of things, and I can't call them more than that, that rely on blockchain technology, which is a decentralized or distributed ledger to function. So decentralized finance are financial instruments, digital applications, decentralized applications that are reliant on distributed ledgers, which are the actual technical term for a blockchain.
They can look up blockchain.
Well, no, let's actually do this in a really simple way, because
Okay.
I DeFi is interesting, but you need to understand the underpinning really, and let me metaphorically lay it out for you. Imagine a blockchain is a block of granite, and you write on a block of granite. You know, there's 3,000-year-old Egyptian hieroglyphs written on blocks of something in the pyramids, limestone or what have you. You write something in stone, it stays there for a long time. You know, maybe not, blockchains won't last 3,000 years, but they're going to last a while. Importantly, you can easily tell if something written in stone has been tampered with. You look at it, you know immediately someone's messed with it because it's written in stone. If someone messes up with the stone, you know. And probably most importantly, the block of stone could care less what you write on it. So blockchains, you can just metaphorically call them writing something in stone, because blockchains are theoretically immutable. You can easily tell if they've been altered, and they don't care what you write into them. There's some mythology about something being on a blockchain being true. No, something on a blockchain is verified to be written on all of the blockchain, meaning that every node of the blockchain will agree with every other node of the blockchain. So what you have there is what everyone will see as what's written there. Whether it's true or false, that depends on what was written, but it will be the same on every copy of the blockchain, which means it is verified to have been what was written. You can tell if someone's altered it. Now, In order for DeFi or cryptocurrencies or NFTs or any of this to exist, you need what's known as a smart contract. That's what drives all of this. And the smart contract is pretty much the same as a regular contract, all a little different. It's digital. And because it's digital, when the terms and conditions are met or when it's executed, you can have it automatically call an action or do something. So you can imagine a smart contract as a vending machine. You go up to the vending machine, you decide what you want, you punch in the number, nothing happens. It asks you for money. You put in your $1.50, and magically, if that's what it costs, they'll give you your item. And if not, it's going to ask you for more money. So when the terms and conditions are met, you get it. And when they aren't, you don't. And of course, now our little house elf from Harry Potter fame runs over to the block of granite and with a chisel and a hammer writes onto the blockchain that transaction. And you keep doing that, rinse, lather, and repeat. And what you end up with is a really interesting record of everything that's ever happened with that vending machine. Now, instead of having that block of granite in one place near the pyramids, imagine there are 11,000 computers that have a copy of that piece of granite, and they all are exactly the same. Whatever transaction occurred in that vending machine, 11,000 people can now say, yep, that's what happened. That's
and
a blockchain.
That is missing the centralized banking and the centralized regulation that traditional currency has, which also is its beauty, is it not?
So I guess there's the beauty of, if you will, decentralized finance and all peer-to-peer networks is that copies of everything go out everywhere, and there is no one actually in charge per se, because once this is set in the wild, everything sort of stays out in the wild. In our normal world, we have gatekeepers who are central authorities. You might host your website at Amazon Web Services. You might like your email to be hosted by Google or Microsoft. These are central authorities. You might keep your money at JP Morgan Chase, a central authority. You trust them to hold your money. If you have stocks, maybe you have someone like Goldman Sachs take digital custody of your stocks and they have your portfolio. When's the last time you had a stock certificate in your hand? There would be never, or very, very rarely. Mostly there are people who are in the digital custody business. There are people in the portfolio business, and you're doing everything electronically, but you're doing it through central authorities. The difference here is that all of these tools are fully decentralized. There's no one to go see. There's no one to seek permission from. You just meet the terms and conditions of the smart contracts and off you go. So if you want to start your own bank today, you go ahead and start it.
It is really incredible, actually. I read that the blockchain initially was started by an anonymous Japanese person whose name I can't recall at the moment. And
so Satoshi Nakamoto, but
yeah,
first of all, no one actually knows if Satoshi Nakamoto exists or not. And
really,
it's not that it's Bitcoin that was started. Blockchain is a technology that has existed for quite some time prior to Bitcoin. All of the components of Bitcoin that made cryptocurrency possible were in the wild already. What Satoshi Nakamoto did in 2008, 2009 is write a white paper that really discussed and demonstrated extraordinary use of ordinary technology. And here you could have a file that was could be transferred that you could be sure was the file as opposed to another file. When you think about digital files, GIF files, JPEG files, Word documents, text files, any kind of music, you can right click it and move it from hard drive to hard drive. You can copy and paste it. I can post it. You can download it. Pretty much any picture you see on the internet, you can right click your mouse and download it, and you'll just have it on your hard drive. You'll have a copy of it. So the idea of having a digital currency, something where a file could not be copied, and if it was copied, you know it was a copy and therefore not real. This was a little bit unusual. In fact, it was thought to not be possible, but using the cryptographic hash and the SHA-256 cryptographic algorithm and the blockchain as described in his paper or her paper. I have no idea if Satoshi Nakamoto is a male, female, boy, girl, Martian of this earth.
maybe
one person,
Martian.
a committee of people, we don't know. There are some people who have some guesses, but the identity of Satoshi Nakamoto has not ever been revealed. So using this protocol, the Bitcoin protocol, we have Bitcoin, and it was brilliant in a way. It's deflationary, exponentially deflationary. There'll only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. There are about 19 million of them out there right now. So if you believe supply and demand drive the price, then theoretically they can only go up, not down. I think the number I heard is roughly 20% of Bitcoins have been burned, meaning they no longer exist. They've been lost, or people didn't quite know what to do with them, or they're in wallets that are tainted and the coins can't get used. So this is a limited supply of digital currency, but Bitcoin is the grandfather of this technology. It's not the current technology there. And I think people, everybody says cryptocurrency, they immediately think Bitcoin, and that is
Mhm.
so wrong. There are dozens of different kinds of cryptocurrencies and literally thousands of examples. So there are utility coins like ETH or Matic. There are meme coins, aka shit coins like Dogecoin, where they're based on a meme, something that just means nothing and has no real backing. There are privacy coins like Monero, which go out of their way to be untraceable, whereas Bitcoin is easily traced. Bitcoin is written to a distributed ledger. You can use the Bitcoin Explorer, look at its blockchain. When someone charges ransomware with Bitcoin, everybody in the world knows where that ransom was paid. Everybody knows what wallet it's sitting in. And you can best believe the FBI, the Mossad, the NSA, the MI6 are all watching that wallet, waiting for someone to take that crypto out. You may not know who owns that wallet, but you know exactly where the money is. And the moment someone goes to take it, they're doomed. So it's like, yeah, it's not anonymous. It's just you don't need to associate your name with it necessarily, but that doesn't mean your name won't be associated with it. And if you have any substantive collection of cryptocurrency, companies like Chainalysis know your wallet, and they can kind of surmise who you are. It's nowhere near as anonymous as you want it to be, unless you're on using a coin like Monero, which is, they've gone out of their way to make that really, really, really hard to trace. So many different kinds of coins.
I work with a forensic accountant, and he points out that the IRS watches this as well and is very interested in it. And that he advises that perhaps people might not want to brag about how much money they're making in their digital currency unless they're also paying their taxes.
Well, I think everybody is going to have to wait and see if the IRS actually makes their code consistent. Again, this is not financial advice. I'm not a licensed financial advisor. I would highly suggest that two things happen. One, you talk to your accountant about your crypto taxes, because the new Biden packages that are about to be passed by Congress call out NFTs as assets that can be taxable under capital gains tax laws. And the SEC is a little bit confused about what is and what is not a security right now. Gary Gensler has not been consistent in what he is calling ETH. Apparently, ETH from Ethereum and Bitcoin are not securities, but others are considered securities. So get a financial professional involved,
absolutely,
tax accountant involved. Oh, and by the way, understand, and I mean deeply, deeply understand, should you decide to make some investments in cryptocurrency, and again, this is one man's opinion, not financial advice, this is inherently extraordinarily risky. So really,
it's a casino. It really is.
Oh, casinos are safe compared to this.
So let's go back to, so what are stable coins?
So a stable coin is another kind of crypto. They are pegged to a fiat currency, generally a fiat or something that is more stable than crypto. So the CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, are being experimented with all over the world right now. Pretty much every central bank is trying to figure out how to do a digital currency. They're calling a CBDC, or a central bank digital currency, and they're considered stable coins, in that they will be pegged dollar for dollar, yuan to yuan, pound for pound, real to real, to a fiat piece of fiat currency. So theoretically, they shouldn't be as volatile as a pure digital cryptocurrency. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. You don't need to have a stable coin be pegged to a fiat currency. You could peg it to gold, you could peg it to titanium, you could peg it to anything you want. But for the most part, they are pegged to fiat currencies from central banks. The United States doesn't actually have a CBDC yet. Janet Yellen promises by December she'll have an opinion on what that'll look like. But there are lots of, there's USDT, USDC, Paxos, Tether. I mean, there are plenty of coins, stable coins, that are pegged to the US dollar. What you don't know is if that's true or not, and exactly how well pegged they are. The Winklevoss brothers have a CBDC for US dollars. There's plenty of CBDCs out there. It's up to you, buyer beware, to make sure that, they actually have a dollar behind each one. I would not be the person to ask about that.
And okay, let's a quick definition, NFTs. Non-fungible tokens.
Right, non-fungible tokens. So everybody has heard that term, and non-fungible tokens. So most of the things in our lives are non-fungible. Most of the assets we own are non-fungible. You're wearing a shirt, I'm wearing a shirt. They are both shirts, but yours is unique to you. It's your size. It's, apparently it's been worn, so it's not new in a package. This is my dress t-shirt. It isn't new either. And while they're both shirts, they are not interchangeable for one another. Your shirt's probably a lot more expensive than my t-shirt from wherever this is from. So I have a house, you have a house, I have an apartment, or you have an apartment, where they're both apartments, but I can't trade you for mine and mine for yours. Different from a fungible asset like a dollar, which actually your dollar and my dollar are completely interchangeable for one another. My dollar will buy what your dollar will buy, and vice versa. So cryptocurrencies are fungible, meaning that your Bitcoin and my Bitcoin are interchangeable for one another with no problem whatsoever. But a non-fungible token, an NFT, is a unique digital asset. It should be one of a kind or one of a collection. So you might have a numbered NFT, which would, one of 100, one of 1,000, one of 10,000, like you were buying lithography artwork that was numbered. Or it could be a unique single piece of art, like an oil painting. There's only one, this is it. And the difference is that it's a digital file as opposed to a physical thing. All NFTs are smart contracts. So what makes NFTs fascinating is that they authenticate ownership of whatever it is. So let's say that it's a GIF file or a JPEG file. This is the original, so says the creator. I've now transferred the ownership to you, but you can have a smart contract call another smart contract, or have terms and conditions for a later date. So let's say there's a secondary market, and secondary market is where my piece of art that I now bought might be auctioned at a future date to someone else. And Christie's may take this NFT and auction it. The original creator can, when originally creating the NFT, say that any subsequent sale, I will get 10% of. And that will be automatic. So you may buy it, and you only really own 90% of it, because the original creator was 10% of whatever you're going to get as a royalty. And there'll be a transaction fee too. So you might really, both of you might not have your full 100%. Someone's going to charge a transaction for moving that from place to place. There might be an auction fee, but after all said and done, it allows the original creator to participate in secondary earnings and tertiary earnings, and on and on and on. The
Which
NFT
is a sea change in the world of art and music.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the artists and musicians have always been on the wrong end of the financial spectrum when it comes to the exploitation of their own works.
So now they have the potential for a new kind of financial freedom, which to me is the most fascinating part of this.
Yes.
And so, I wonder, is the era of the starving artist coming to an end, and how many people will do this, and what is NFT art?
Well, so I think some of the NFT art is kind of 95% BS and 5% BS. I mean, I think there's a lot of fad here, but what there also is ways to imagine new business models, and that's the most exciting part. What starving artists, during the pandemic, what you probably don't know is that I started my career as a composer, producer of music for television, advertising, and I grew up in a musical household. Mom and dad were music educators. They owned music stores, and that's my childhood. And I started writing music at age 4, and I became a union member of Local 802 at age 12, and started playing professionally at that time for money. I played a lot out before that. Right out of college, I went to NYU Film School, went right into the jingle business, worked for a guy named Don Elliott, and then opened my own music production company, and spent the next 20 years writing full time. All of my dearest friends are musicians and singers in the New York area and Los Angeles proper, because that's where most of the music I produced, composed and produced was realized. Owned a lot of recording studios, audio and video studios on both coasts. And during the pandemic, some of my very dearest friends, lifelong friends, were starving. Guitarists,
literally, I know.
Guitarists,
yeah,
bass players, singers, trumpet players, trombone players. Doesn't matter if you play a musical instrument. You could not play Broadway. You couldn't play a studio gig. You couldn't sing in a church choir professionally. You couldn't sing at a nightclub there's nothing you could do. You were landlocked, and best you could come up with was working a little bit on Zoom. Maybe you give a lesson, on Zoom, or possibly you could pull your band together if you were not scared of everybody having COVID, and you could, do some stuff, but nobody was making a living. And everybody, on pure survival, necessity being the mother of invention, everybody figured out a way to get online. The creator class figured out a way to get paid for what they do, which is create. And I think NFTs play a role in that. And I think cryptocurrency plays a role in this. And if I think about the future, I think about decentralized finance as the tool set that's going to empower the creator class to participate in the value they create, whether you're an artist or a musician. It really doesn't matter. If you create value with an intangible asset like music, where the live performance has a value to someone and they will pay to be there, and the recorded record of the actual record of that performance, whether you've created or whether you've performed a recording or recorded a performance, doesn't matter. The physical embodiment of that, which will now live digitally, can have a value long after you've created it, and you can keep part of that value. And I think that, and so can the bass player, and so can the drummer, and so everybody can participate. This democratizes a lot of the business. It takes out the recorded music company. It takes out the middle people. It takes your agent and manager out of there. Now, will they do it? Look, when MTV went on the air, they went on the air with a song, Video Killed a Radio Star, 1980. And that was a profound kind of ironic piece of art to start MTV with, because as everyone knows, prior to MTV, there were bands that just made albums. They were studio bands. Steely Dan rarely performed on tour. Walter Becker and Donald Fagen went in the studio and they came out with these incredible albums, and people loved them, but no one ever saw these guys. They weren't going out playing out. You didn't go to a Steely Dan concert, you bought the record. After MTV launched, you had to be a whole new set of skills. You had to be a completely different kind of artist. You had to be great as a videographer and video maker. You had to be great on camera. You had to have this amazing presence. As technology advanced, I'm not telling anybody something they don't know. You had to become first an internet professional and then a social media professional. Now you have to be a TikTok star, because your kids are going to discover music not on the radio. They're not going to discover you anyway. They're going to discover you on TikTok. You got to be making interesting Instagram TV and interesting TikTok. So will you now be an interesting NFT artist? Will you now be an interesting cryptocurrency or DeFi toolset user? Because if you're not, you will not be able to do what Madonna did with video, or what Gaga did with social media, or what Taylor Swift is able to do in the world of post-internet kind of TikTok. Like, where you can choose the artists one after the other. You can sort of see the pivotal moment. And by the way, this isn't new, right? We've had to evolve with the technology. They said that Kennedy was the first television president.
He certainly was.
The debate, the Nixon-Kennedy debate, was heard on the radio, and people who heard it on the radio believed Nixon won. People saw it on TV, believed Kennedy won. Why? Jacqueline had him wear makeup. She chose his outfit. Nixon refused to wear makeup. He was flop sweating. And they had close-ups. And so when you look at those debates, the kinescopes of those debates, you see Nixon like nervous and flipping out and looking like shifty eyes and shifty eyes. Kennedy is just smooth and gorgeous. But you listen on the radio to the substance, you kind of go, oh, wait, I think Nixon has this. But they were totally different medium. And so you could argue that Obama was the first internet president. You can certainly argue that Trump was the first social media president. So now we're going to have artists, creators, and politicians that are decentralized finance or Web 3.0 of whatever they are. And that's what's coming. And it's coming as sure as you and I are sitting here, and there's nothing that's going to stop it.
I think that's wonderful, actually.
Yeah, me too.
So let's move on to brands. Please explain some of the uses, and then let's talk about brands and digital currencies. And you've said the usual, and this is so true, test, learn, modify, repeat. That model doesn't apply anymore. And several major companies have jumped in, and famous people are issuing NFTs. Coca-Cola, Microsoft, Nike, Taco Bell. Lil Nas X just released his album as an NFT. Time Magazine, Major League Baseball, the NBA. Are we looking at FOMO, or should brands be jumping in?
No, you're looking at FOMO. There are reasons to issue NFTs.
When does it make sense?
Well, if you can imagine a business model where you want to have first-party data from Know Your Customer, where you believe there is some value that you are creating for the user that justifies their payment for the NFT, whether they can invest, whether it's investable, or whether there's an investment thesis, or whether there's a collectible value, digital collectible, souvenir value, that is up to the brand. I think it's really difficult to separate out the wheat from the chaff here for most people, because just some random JPEG file with some art on it does not constitute something of value. But if you're a brand and you've got a loyalty program or a couponing program, or you've got a program where you can help you can help create value for your audience, or you can bring together a community of passion or a community of interest around your brand, an NFT is a good way to aggregate that data. It's a good way to collect the people, and it's a good way to create a marketplace for that interchange. If you can't model that out with your marketing, don't do it. It's just gonna, I mean, by the way, it is literally the widget of 2021. There was a time when early in the web where everybody had to have a widget. There was a time when everybody had to have an app. Now people realize, I don't need an app. I need a mobile web experience. I need a way to service data and get my consumers to easily interface with my tools so that I can serve them best and give them the best user experience possible and the best user interface possible. That may be an app, but it may not be. You don't need to spend $2 to get someone to download it, then have it just live somewhere in their smartphone and they never open it again. What you need to do is have a compelling reason for them to interact with your organization. So if an NFT is a compelling reason for someone to interact with your organization, you're creating value for them and doing something that's purposeful. One of my clients is doing something very interesting with retired carbon units, carbon credits. And so they're demonstrating that these carbon credits have been retired. They've turned them into NFTs, and as part of their social responsibility, they're allowing people to purchase these, and they're matching the dollar for dollar and donating to save the environment. Like that kind of community of passion around some really important ecological and sustainable program is a great use of NFTs. And people are going to go, wait, don't NFTs burn a ton of electricity? It's like, yes, they do if you do them one way.
So does making currency.
But they don't if you do it a different way. And so, depending on how under the hood you get, if you're just reading the headline, then yeah, things use a lot of electricity. If you look at how it's actually done, you'll realize, wait a minute, 50% of these plants use renewable energy because it's cheaper. It's in their best interest to use the cheapest electricity, and it's in your best interest for them to use renewable energy. So wow, everybody's win-win. No, it's using a lot of electricity, but electricity, it's not really contributing to the carbon problem that people believe it is. And more importantly, electricity is not storable. So if you don't use electricity, meaning if you don't level out the power grid in every jurisdiction, the power grid gets a little weird. So putting load on the power grid in a programmable way, actually, if you ask power companies, is pretty good for the power companies. And they'll tell you that since they don't have batteries to store their stuff, they basically let it go out into the ether when they can't use it. So it's a pretty interesting trade-off. It's a more complex story than we can get into right now, but energy management is probably benefited in many ways by the renewable energy dollars that have been spent by the people who have been very, very into distributed ledgers and decentralized finance. China is using it's not ecologically sound argument so that they can gain control of the full control of the currency in their country. They have they can't make me believe for a second that they have any interest in anything other than that. It's every move they've made has been about controlling currency.
And equally so, you have San Salvador saying this is now our fiat currency. Like that was an insane move. They will lose their banking credibility, certifications, all sorts of issues come for them.
Maybe look, again, best to talk to a financial professional about this and someone who's deeply steeped in money markets and monetary policy. What I think I can add to that conversation, which may just be noise, to be fair, is no, seriously, because this is one man's opinion. This is not, you should really talk to an economist or someone who's really into monetary policy about what this may mean. It makes no sense because at best, a Bitcoin transaction you're at 5 transactions to 10 transactions a second. They would have to adopt Lightning Network or some other protocol in order to make Bitcoin fungible to the point where you could use it. For reference, the Visa network, when you charge on a Visa card, They can handle up to 65,000 transactions per second. On average, they handle 1,800 per second. Christmas Eve, it's 2,500, but that's not 5, right? That's not 100. We're talking, enough transactions per second where everyone could use it. That's thing one. Thing two, Bitcoin goes up and down somewhere between 30 and 50% every 4 or 5 weeks, and has been doing so for a long time. And once in a while, it loses 50, 70% of its value and stays there for 6 months or a year. I don't know how anyone can pay someone in Bitcoin, and unless they sell it immediately for fiat currency that is pegged to something or stable in a money market, how they could rely on it as a store of wealth. Now, that's, again, just common sense. It's
Exactly.
not anything else. They could have chosen dozens of other kinds of cryptocurrency. And if you look at a country like Brazil, where cryptocurrency is in hard, fast use every day, oddly enough, it's not in use by rich people. It's in use by poor people, because the fiat currency in Brazil is not serving them. So they're using their own.
That's fascinating.
There is look, 19th century America, Wild West. You go in the 1850s, 1840s, there's hundreds of currencies. Banks are issuing their own, towns are issuing their own. We're out in the prairies somewhere. There's no way to get, there's no national currency.
Well, that's the problem with San Salvador. There's other countries might not have the same currency, and everybody's got to have a way of dealing with each other. I apologize for my dog.
In a weird way though, and again, best to talk to someone who understands monetary policy better than I do. What they have done is they've said, bring all your currencies on an exchange, transfer them or translate them to Bitcoin, and now you can use your Bitcoin. So, in a very strange way, it's great for Bitcoin. It may turn out to be okay for El Salvador. It doesn't seem like it was a brilliant move, but those of us who are long on all cryptocurrency see it as a net positive, although, again, I'm not sure it's a net positive for the people who live in El Salvador.
What's the word that you use? Nodlers, long-term?
Hodler.
Yeah. It's people who hold on to their currency.
No one really knows if that's hold on for dear life as an initialism, HODL, or if it was a typo. But to hodl or to hodl or to be a hodler is someone who's long on crypto. It's a slang term.
That's a funny word.
But I think, it is a funny word. I think it was originally a typo, although people think it's an initialism for hold on for dear life.
So let's go back to NFTs and brands. What kind of risks are there for brands that invest in NFTs?
I don't think the risks are that great, other than leaving your clients holding the bag. If you look at the way the world of crypto functions, these are foundations, they are democracies, these are communities of practice around the idea of cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. That's how all of the coins work. You can look at the Cardano Foundation, which has their ADA coin, Ethereum Foundation, which has ETH. You can look at Cosmos, which is the Terra Foundation. And you should, if you want to really understand this business, you really should go read the manifestos of these foundations. They have lofty ideals. Some of them are about, I don't want the government involved in my wealth and finance. Some of them are about, I want to make this accessible to people who are unbanked. Some of them are, I want to be able to trade overseas free. I mean, everyone's got their own kind of way they're thinking about this. And each one has a different kind of tokenomics. And the tokenomics are really important to you, because this is how the initial coin offering was made. How many people own these coins? Are there a small group of people who are part of the foundation who own the coin, and then some of the coins are in the public? Are there some held by the foundation's treasury? How many will be released? Is it an inflationary or deflationary currency? Are all the coins already minted, or can they be mined over time, or minted and rewarded? Are they burning coins? Like, what are the tokenomics of each foundation? Because without understanding this, you will never be able to understand the value. And with an NFT, when you ask if a brand can be burned by the NFT, the question is answered with a question. Did you have noble reasons for value creation, or were you just goofing around for FOMO reasons? Because if you're goofing around, you better hope it's just considered a fad and that they were either free or really cheap. Oh, dollar NFTs or whatever. But if you're charging people real money and you burn them and they're left holding the bag, or there's no liquidity and there's no yield management, so they cannot seek yield, they cannot liquidate their assets. There's no market for it, and you've charged them money and they blame you. I think that's fairly dangerous for marketers. So I wouldn't be messing with this unless you understood fan development value and audience development value and business development value of this particular tool set.
The issue becomes, are there marketers who are qualified to advise corporations on this topic? And
Coach,
yeah,
pick
I know for sure. And, yeah, but that's a big question. And right now it's like saying, look at our website was in 1995, look at our NFT. I mean, it's the same thing. The question becomes one of the sustainability of it. And, jumping ahead to like 2023, how do you think this will evolve?
There's going to be a war, a real serious war between governments and the world of decentralized finance. People are going
looking that way.
People are going to start storing a lot of money. There's a couple $1 trillion there now. By 2023, there's going to be more trillions there. What's a government is a quick question, right? What is a government? A government is information, the military, and currency. So if you have those three things, you can have a government. If I have a landmass, I've got a social contract, I issue currency, I protect them with my military, and I control information, I have a government. That's the definition of every government pretty much on earth. Well, if you take currency away from the government, this is problematic. Now, in practice, they can't take it fully away because I have a house in a little town called New Milford, Connecticut. And there we have roads and they need to be plowed. And we have electricity and we need to, electrify our houses. We have schools and water flows. They need water. And so there is a Commonwealth of New Milford where we pay some taxes to the Commonwealth, and the Commonwealth provides police, fire protection, fire department, police protection, all these things. It's a school system. If we don't pay them taxes, they can't do that. And so at a certain level, the social contract I have with my immediate community, the physical community I live next to, that is immutable. And I really can't do much about that. Now, I could be really bummed about the federal government taxing me, and I could say, you're making cruise missiles and you're dropping them on people I don't know, and you're building aircraft carriers I don't need, and I don't know how many atomic bombs we need, and I don't think you're doing a good job, blah, blah, blah. So I don't want you taking that money. Like, you could have that argument with someone, and people do have that argument
every day.
Right. So, there are people who are going to say, I'm going to take my money and I'm going to spend it my way. I'm going to do something different. And this war is going to happen between central banks and fractionalized lending facilities, regular banks, and cryptocurrency and decentralized finance. This war is coming, and the regulators are going to do their best, and the governments are going to do their best, and the money is going to do its best, the decentralized money, because there's going to be a lot of it. That war is going to happen. But I think the way you should think about this isn't that. I would say, if I look to the future I look to as a technologist, optimist, and someone who thinks about innovation every day. I think it was 1980. It could have been as late as 82, but I think it was 80. I got my first Apple II Plus computer. That's what I think.
Great. Oh God, they were great.
It had I think it had 140 kilobyte 5-inch floppy disk drive. It had a green screen monitor from somewhere. I want to say it had 8 kilobytes of RAM. And I think it had a 6500 processor in it, a Motorola processor. And it word processed. It did a database. There was VisiCalc, which was an early version of Excel. Nothing's changed from the capability set of a personal computer from that day to today, except the speed and capability, and of course the interconnectivity. But many things have changed because of the democratization of computation and information. Social media is completely about that. The smartphone I'm holding in my pocket is completely about that. Everybody's connection to everybody is completely about that. We democratized connectivity and information with the personal computer and the microchip. If you really want to understand the future of DeFi and decentralized finance, think of it as the democratization of financial instruments. What would happen if you didn't have to go to the bank, if you didn't have to see the government, if you didn't have to ask someone's permission, if there were no middle person, if you could just invent a new business model, create value, and be remunerated for it immediately by your own innovation and your own ingenuity and your own creativity? What if you could just go do it? And that's really what happens with, if I want to write a song today, or if I want to make a video today, I pick up my phone, I make a video, and as soon as I'm done with it, it's available to everyone in the world. Everyone in the world may not see it, but the body of knowledge of mankind is increased because I have put my video out in the wild, or my music out in the wild, or my oration out in the wild, or my blog post out in the wild. I can do that with absolutely no one's permission. Someone may take it down, someone may yell at me, but I can get it out there with no muss or fuss. Now imagine if I could create a business, and imagine if I could control money the same way. That's where this goes. How it gets there, your guess is as good as mine, but everyone's going to add their own creative contribution to this, their own innovation to it. These tools empower and enable that. So your 1995 analogy is exactly right. It's 1995. Someone just invented HTML, the new version of it in DeFi. Mark Andreessen just invented Netscape, and we are just about to get into we're leaving AOL and Prodigy and CompuServe. We're about to get into the World Wide Web. That is the metaphor that holds perfectly here. But imagine it with finance as opposed to with information, and you'll have a good intellectual framework to think about the future.
I have one more question. What about the metaverse? How will this play into the metaverse?
I think it's all part of the same puzzle. The metaverse is going to be fully dependent on people's ability to innovate and create value for people. Why am I going there? What is the metaverse to me? We're about to enter the age where the transitional age between handsets and extended reality. Our smartphones are going to first be the engine that drive our extended reality through the glasses we put on, and then ultimately the technology will miniaturize enough, and battery power will be good enough, and cloud connectivity will be hardcore enough. The low latency, high bandwidth networks will be robust enough and ubiquitous enough where our eyeglasses will just be that. And ultimately we'll have them probably surgically implanted. But at the moment, we're in a transitional phase between using our handhelds and this new extended reality, where I have a heads-up display for everything, where I've got an AI assist for everything. I'm looking at you. I can't remember how you pronounce your first name. It tells me. I can't remember what exactly the formula for this is. I don't remember the recipe for making my grandma's blintzes, and here that is. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. I will be enhanced and augmented by trained AI models that understand me, that belong to me, don't belong to someone else. It's not a third party. And, this is the kind of world that we're heading towards right now. The metaverse plays into that. Our avatars will live there. Is it going to capture people's imagination for anything more than gameplay? We'll see. In the past, it hasn't, but the technology hasn't been where it is now. So I think if we're honest with ourselves, this is a new shiny object that is yet to be fully explored. What we are exploring now, we know is coming. You got Facebook and out with Ray-Ban stories. There's sunglasses with the camera in them. Apple is clearly going to put out somewhere in 22, early 23, extended reality heads-up displays that will go in glasses that you can have prescription made. That is going to be unbelievably cool, or it's going to unbelievably suck, and I don't know which. But my experience with Apple is that it's going to be unbelievably cool, and it'll go through its, it'll go through its life cycle, and then we'll see. I'm very excited about it. Metaverse, time will tell. Extended reality, clearly it's a future. Is it the future? I don't know, but it's a future, and it's one that I kind of can't wait for.
It is real. I mean, it's both exciting and terrifying at the same time. And so the world is clearly changing, and it's about time that marketers start paying attention to what is happening around them and stop saying, let me know when it becomes mainstream, because that's already happening.
Oh, yeah.
So Shelly, I will put all the links of all the places that people can find you and links to your social networks, to your books, to your website, etc., in the show notes. And I thank you so much for your time today. This has
I
been
appreciate it.
fascinating.
All righty. You take
Thank
care.
you. Thanks.